Welcome to the first UCL Fantasy video and podcast of the new season. This will be my first draft, and remember, there will be some issues with it because it's literally the first draft I've made for this fantasy format, and I will address some of these problems in future drafts and the team selection. And of course, deadline streams are a habit on this channel for UCL Fantasy and FPL, so 2 hours before the deadline, I will be streaming for UCL Fantasy in Matchday 1 as the Champions League begins for yet another campaign. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. If you enjoy my content, let's try to get this to over 300 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers, which is our goal by the end of the year. Also check all the other links in the description below for my Twitter and Instagram for all of this UCL Fantasy and FPL updates, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Draft Town, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. It's worth highlighting the key differences in UCL Fantasy and the Champions League this year. With a new format, we have a league phase now instead of a traditional group stage. So every single team will have 8 opponents, and those that finish between 1st to 8th in the league table will automatically qualify for the round of 16. And then those clubs between 9th and 24th will have to do a playoff round, and those that win those playoff rounds will then qualify for the round of 16. So we've got an extra bit of games there, and it'll be 17 match days this season as opposed to the usual 13. Now, if you want to see a video and podcast directly talking about all the rules and also the key changes in detail, then let me know down the comment section below. But I do have a how to play guide from several years ago, and most of it is still relevant because in UCL Fantasy, not much has really changed actually. The biggest difference lies with the number of transfers. So as usual, we have unlimited transfers for match day 1, then we have 2 per match day during the league phase, and then before the knockout round playoffs, we get unlimited transfers yet again. Then during those matches, we have 2 free transfers per match day, and then for the knockouts, you get unlimited transfers yet again, and afterwards it's pretty much the same as last season. So 3 transfers for the second leg of the round of 16, 5 free transfers for the quarterfinals, and that trend continues all the way to the final, where you also have 5 free transfers. We still have the same chips as before, the Limitless, where you can build a team specifically for 1 match day only with no budget restrictions whatsoever, and the wildcard, which you may know from FPL, and of course Euro Fantasy, where you can build a team which will be permanent, so it won't reset after the match day is over like the Limitless would, but you do have budget restrictions with the wildcard. So like I said, if you want me to delve into those rules in detail, let me know down in the comment section below. But let's now start building my first draft, starting with the goalkeepers and with 100 million in budget. When building your UCL Fantasy squad, you have to choose 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 3 forwards, which is the same as FPL. You have to comply with the 100 million budget, and you can't play any chip that includes the Limitless or the wildcard in any match day where you have unlimited transfers. But from match day 2 onwards, you can start to play one of these chips, and my recommendation is to use the Limitless as early as possible. So in the group phase would be the ideal scenario. As for the wildcard, you can be flexible and all depends on your approach from the get-go, but you could save that for later in the campaign, and given the extra match days, I think it will be a very popular strategy to save the wildcard for the knockouts, which I can delve into in a dedicated chip strategy guide. Let me know if you want to see that as well down the comment section below. But let's start off with the goalkeepers. If you're unsure about substitutions and the captaincy, refer to my how to play guide, which I made several years ago. It's very important so you get a full grip on UCL Fantasy. The first player in my UCL Fantasy team is Di Gregorio from Juventus, and he has kept 3 clean sheets out of 3 matches in Serie A, but he's only made 2 saves in that time period, so you might not expect many 7-pointers or above, but if you can consistently get 6 pointers in the group phase, you'll be very happy with that. Juventus have some tough fixtures in there, and the same goes for every team essentially, but some teams will have more difficult group phases than others. Look at Paris Saint-Germain, for example, and Juventus do face the likes of Man City at home, even Aston Villa away, which can be a tough game, but overall, I think Juventus could finish quite high in the group phase based on the fixtures they have, and I could see several clean sheets for the Italians. Di Gregorio is only 4.5 million. He's the starting goalkeeper for a top club. I know Juventus have been a bit shaky in the last couple of seasons, but I really think they can get going this year in the Champions League. His ownership is only 3%, and I would expect that to rise over the coming weeks as you start to realise we've got a 4.5 million goalkeeper who's starting for a very big club who could do very well in the group stages. But next up, I'm going for a more expensive choice in goal, and you don't have to do the same thing as I am. But David Raya has had an incredible start to the Premier League season. He's probably been the standout Premier League goalkeeper, actually. He has made some big saves in the opening 2 matches. Even against Brighton, he made another terrific save. He's probably been Arsenal's best player in the last couple of games. And Arsenal conceded their only goal after going down to 10 men against Brighton. So they're also looking quite strong with 5 goals scored and 1 conceded. And they're 4th in the Premier League table at the moment, and David Raya is 2nd in terms of FPL points amongst goalkeepers with 20. He's averaging 6.7 per match. He's priced at 5.5 million in UCL Fantasy, and his ownership is 18%, so he's a far more template pick, but you can go for him to cover the Gunners' defence. They've got a decent set of fixtures in the group phase, but there are some difficult ones in there, even Sporting away, you've got Atalanta away, and PSG at home. Those are some difficult games, not to mention the most difficult of all, Inter Milan away. So you don't necessarily need to go for David Raya or any Arsenal defender, but they have one of the best defences in Europe in my opinion, and I'd highly recommend it if possible. Sacha Boey is the least nailed on pick in my UCL Fantasy team. I could see myself changing him because he is not nailed on in his own club. He started the first game against Wolfsburg, a 3-2 victory. He provided an assist as well, but he was booked in that match and he was subbed off around 65 minutes and he didn't play a single minute in the following game, a 2-0 win over Freiburg. Bayern Munich have won both matches so far in the Bundesliga and they are sitting 2nd in that table. But Sacha Boey isn't going to start week in, week out. We saw Joshua Kimmich being shifted to right back in the second game, so be very careful with this particular selection. He's got 2% ownership and a price tag of 4.5 million. He was quite decent in UCL Fantasy last season with 1 goal and 34 ball recoveries, and he didn't start that many games for the Bavarians, and they've got some excellent fixtures in the group stages with Dynamo Zagreb at home in Matchday 1. There are some tricky games in there, like Aston Villa away, Barcelona away, and potentially Feyenoord away. PSG at home could also be quite tough, but Bayern Munich are expected to win the vast majority of their matches, even with the new manager, Vincent Kompany. But next up, I'm going to go for a premium defender here. I think he's well worth the money. He's had an excellent start to the season, and especially his club, who are sitting 2nd in the Premier League table, and that is Trent Alexander-Arnold with a 6 million price tag and 19% ownership. He has 20 FPL points in the first 3 game weeks, and Liverpool have kept 3 clean sheets out of 3 matches, a perfect start for the new manager, Arne Slot, and Liverpool have some very good fixtures in my opinion. Bayer Leverkusen at home will be quite tough, even Real Madrid at home of course, but I think they could easily win the rest of their matches because they are one of the best teams in Europe on current form. Will it stick? Maybe not, but I think if Liverpool can continue this form, they've got a bit of squad depth in certain positions, they can really challenge on all fronts in the Champions League and Premier League this season. And the same goes for the best club in world football, arguably, alongside Real Madrid, and that is Manchester City and Josko Gvardiol. But it's worth mentioning that with Rico Lewis in the starting 11, Gvardiol plays a far less offensive role. So with Kyle Walker knocking on the door and Rico Lewis starting week in, week out in the Premier League, there will be one competition where Kyle Walker starts, and if Gvardiol's in the lineup as well, he will have the license to bomb forward, and he did extremely well towards the back end of last season, helping Man City win a 4th consecutive Premier League title with so many goals and assists in crucial moments for the citizens. Gvardiol does cost 5.5 million and its ownership is 14%, but I have to say Man City probably have a very easy group on paper. Inter Milan at home is probably the toughest they ever get, and Juventus away, but for the rest you could see Man City winning a lot of these games quite comfortably, even if they rotate in key positions. Now we've got 2 defender slots left, and I'm going to go for another premium defender, and that's something I might change in future drafts. So downgrading one of these premium defenders, getting a budget option, and focusing more money on the midfield and attack. But I'm going for Dani Carvajal, who scored the opening goal in the Champions League final, 1 player of the match, and he had a decent campaign last season in the Champions League. Not too many UCL Fantasy points, but he delivered when it mattered most, and I could see him doing very well in the big games for Los Merengues once again. They've had a shaky start to this season. They won the Super Cup against Atalanta, a 2-0 win, and they faced them in the group phase. But in La Liga, they have dropped points in 2 matches already. They remain unbeaten, but it's not looking great at the moment, and Barcelona are currently leading the La Liga table, but Real Madrid have the best squad on paper in that competition, and once they gel, it's only a matter of time before they start racking up the points in that competition and also deliver in the Champions League, and they are the favourites to win it. Once again, in my opinion, it's between them and Man City, but let's see if we get a new winner this time round. The fifth and final defender is going to be a Barcelona one, actually, who's a budget option. He has started 4 out of 4 matches so far under Hansi Flick, and that's going to be cCaFxb, a 17-year-old. He has had a great Olympic tournament, helping Spain win that competition, and I could see him being one of the best options in terms of ball recoveries and clean sheets for his price point. So if you are looking for a 4-point family defender, my favourite is going to be cCaFxb over the likes of Sacha Boey and the rest. But what I might end up doing is downgrading a Carvajal to another 4-point family option, possibly even a 4 million starting defender, and then using that to upgrade the midfield and forward line. Joshua Kimmich was the 4th highest scoring UCL Fantasy midfielder last season with 59 points. I think he offers excellent value at 6 million, and he's won Player of the Match awards quite consistently. He's got a bit of everything about him. He can get the odd goal, multiple assists, Player of the Match awards, ball recoveries, and clean sheet points. So even at right back, I think he's an excellent choice in UCL Fantasy. He has started both games in the Bundesliga so far. He's a very versatile player, and Bayern Munich are second in that table with 2 wins out of 2, and he got 56 ball recoveries in the last campaign in the Champions League with 2 Player of the Match awards. So Joshua Kimmich is a top recommendation from me. His ownership is 13%, and if you're considering him or Rodri, I'd rather go for Kimmich. He's 1 million cheaper, and he can match the Spaniard or even outperform him in this competition. So I'd highly recommend Joshua Kimmich, even if you want to go for another Bayern Munich midfielder who's going to be more exciting due to his attacking role, and that's Michael Olise at 6.5 million. I'm not a big fan of doubling up on midfields really, but I think this could really work out. You've got Olise for the goals and assists, and Joshua Kimmich as a jack of all trades in UCL Fantasy. Now, Olise scored 10 goals and provided 6 assists in just 14 starts for Crystal Palace last season. He had an excellent Olympic tournament where he returned in every single game bar 1 in that competition, and he produced multiple double-digit hauls in FPL, especially with that combination with Mateta and Eze towards the back end of the last campaign. Now, the Frenchman provided an assist on his Bayern Munich debut in the DFB Pokal, and that was a 4-0 win for Bayern Munich. He has blanked in the Bundesliga so far, but once he fully acclimatizes, I could see the Frenchman doing extremely well and getting a lot of goals and assists for his new club. So I'd highly recommend him. His ownership is only 4%, but I feel that will change by the Matchday 1 deadline. Next up is a injured player at the moment, but I would expect him to be available for the first Champions League game, and that's Jude Bellingham, who costs 9 million. He is still underpriced, in my opinion. He's always been a great UCL Fantasy option, even back to his Borussia Dortmund days. He registered an assist in the Champions League final, the Euro final, and also the UEFA Super Cup against Atalanta, so he is delivering in the big games. He is currently injured and only started 1 league match against Mallorca, a 1-1 draw. His ownership is 35%, and he got 72 UCL Fantasy points last season with 4 goals, 5 assists, and 3 Player of the Match awards. I also like Real Madrid's fixtures in the group stage. There are some tricky ones in there, like Liverpool away, but Real Madrid have an excellent record against the Reds, and it wouldn't surprise me if they got yet another victory in their hands. Now I'm going to go for another 9 million midfielder who has had a great start to the Premier League season, and he did very well in his first Champions League campaign last year, and that is Bukayo Saka, who got 58 UCL Fantasy points last season, despite only reaching the quarter-finals. He had an excellent group stage. He was actually matching the likes of Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane, and some of the top assets in UCL Fantasy. The same goes for FPL this season. He has delivered in every single Premier League match so far, with 1 goal and 3 assists, 1 double-digit haul, and 24 FPL points, averaging 8 per match, which is very good. He's not going to keep this up, of course, and the next 2 fixtures in the Premier League are very tough for the Gunners, but Saka has done it in multiple big games, and he is probably Arsenal's most important player. They need him fit for the rest of the season to challenge for the Champions League and Premier League title. He's combining very well with cCaFxb at the moment. In fact, they've linked up for 3 of Arsenal's 5 goals so far this season. His ownership is only 14%, which does surprise me, but I think Arsenal have some decent fixtures on paper. There are some tricky ones, of course, but Saka can deliver in those big matches, and I would highly recommend him if possible, especially over the other Arsenal midfielders you have on offer, like Odegaard, who can be brilliant on his day, but Saka's the most consistent in terms of goals and assists combined. The fifth and final midfielder is a close one because Yamal is very template at the moment and he's going to get a lot of assists, a few goals this season. He had an excellent Euro tournament and he's one of the standout players this season. But I'm going to go for Rafinha, who's been in incredible form since March, I would argue, when Xavi was still in charge. And I think he's going to do very well and get the most goals from any Barcelona midfielder. Only Lewandowski would be expected to outscore him in the Barcelona ranks. That's 3 goals and 2 assists in 4 La Liga starts in the new campaign. And most of these contributions did come in that 7-0 win for Barcelona recently. So maybe he stat padded a little bit in that match. But Rafinha played very well in the other games, despite registering no goals or assists in those particular matches. His ownership is 7%. So if you want to go for a differential, I'd highly recommend Rafinha over Yamal, or possibly even both at the same time if you're backing Barcelona to have a very strong Champions League campaign. He got 40 UCL Fantasy points last season with 3 goals and 4 assists, and he scored in both matches against Paris Saint-Germain, despite the fact that Barcelona ended up crashing out of that competition quite early for their high standards. So I'm very happy with this midfield 5. You can't cover every player or team, of course, but there's no one from Man City here at the moment, and having 2 from Bayern Munich seems excessive, but I like the balance. You've got Joshua Kimmich for the ball recoveries, and he can get a bit of everything in UCL Fantasy. Elise, Bellingham, Saka and Rafinha can get very consistent goals and assists. They've also got some pretty decent fixtures in the group phase, and overall, I think they offer tremendous value in the midfield. Another UCL Fantasy pick I'm not completely sure about is Diogo Jota. If he starts, he's one of the most efficient players you can ask for, particularly at that price point and position, but there is competition with Darwin Núñez and Gakpo, so be very careful if you end up going for Diogo Jota. I may end up switching to another Liverpool forward or going for a more nailed-on striker like Jimenez from Feyenoord, but I really back Liverpool to do well in the group stage, and they've got a great Champions League record overall. And if Jota is benched in Game Week 4 in FPL, for example, then I'd be quite confident he'll start in Matchday 1 of UCL Fantasy. He has 1 goal and 1 assist this season. He has started all 3 Premier League games so far, and that's 17 points in FPL, which is quite decent for his price point. His ownership is 4%. He costs 7.5 million in UCL Fantasy as well, and the fixtures are fantastic for the most part. And even in the difficult games, Liverpool may end up losing, but Jota has a great chance of scoring or assisting if he's on the pitch. And that's another thing. Even off the bench, he can make an immediate impact. He doesn't need many minutes or opportunities to score a goal and even provide the odd assist from time to time. But next up is Erling Haaland, who is arguably the best striker in world football at the moment. His records are just simply sensational. He's got more goals than games played in the Premier League, 70 goals in 69 games. In the Champions League is a similar story. At every club he's been at, he's pretty much matching the goals and games played. And in recent matches, he has back-to-back hat-tricks against Ipswich Town and West Ham, with 7 Premier League goals in the opening 3 matches and 41 FPL points. Only Mohamed Salah can keep pace with him, and that's because he's a midfielder and has the advantage by getting an extra point for scoring a goal and the clean sheet points, which Erling Haaland doesn't have the same luxury of. But Erling Haaland, for me, is probably the best forward, even over Vinicius Jr. at the moment, but you could definitely make a case for other strikers like Harry Kane, Vinicius, Kylian Mbappe. They are all top talents, and ideally you'd go for one of those alongside Erling Haaland in your 15-man squad. But the third and final forward in my team is going to be a cheaper option who costs 7.5 million. You've probably heard his name time after time again, and that's Gyökeres from Sporting. He has an incredible goal-scoring record, 7 goals and 1 assist in 4 starts in the new season. He delivered 5 goals and 2 assists in 9 Europa League games in the last campaign, and no blanks in the new season, by the way, with 2 assists in the Portuguese Super Cup final against Porto, which Sporting ended up losing, and they are top of the Portuguese league with 4 wins out of 4, 16 goals scored and 2 conceded. And Gyökeres already has a hat-trick to his name in the new campaign, and also several penalties. In fact, he has taken 3 and scored every single one of them, so he is an excellent choice up front. Sporting have some tough games in there, like Arsenal and Manchester City, but I still think they can win a few games in the group phase and score plenty of goals, with Gyökeres being at the heart of it. It's time to discuss the starting 11 and the captaincy, with Di Gregorio in goal, and David Raya on the bench. Sacha Boey, Trent, Gvardiol and Carvajal. Kimmich, Elise and Bellingham in the midfield, with Jota, Haaland and Gyökeres up front. My bench comprises of Raya, Saka, Rafinha and Cubarsí. And you might be thinking, why are such good players on your bench? Why don't you go for budget options and focus on your starting 11? Because in UCL Fantasy, just like the Euros and the World Cup, which I've covered on this channel, you can make substitutions during the match day and change the captaincy. And what you want to do is toggle this by date and have those playing on the 19th of September on your bench. You might have one or two in your starting 11. That's completely fine. As long as you don't have players on the 17th of September on your bench, you're completely good to go, because you want to maximize your chances of getting points. And let's say, for example, Gyökeres and Jota blank on the first day. You can then sub them out during the substitution window and bring on players who haven't played yet on the 18th or 19th of September and maximize your chances of getting points. And as for the captaincy, my current plan with this setup is to captain Bellingham on the first day, provided he's fit. On the 18th, I go for Erling Haaland, and obviously, who better can you go for as a second captaincy choice? And then on the 19th of September, I've got plenty of options, but I'd probably go for Rafinha over Saka, as I believe Barcelona have a better fixture on paper and they're also in better form offensively compared to the Gunners. So those are my plans with my first draft. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Our aim is to get this video to 300 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 35 subscribers and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon and the channel memberships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, UCL Fantasy League, Draft Town, and also Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Matchday 1 and the rest of the tournament, and I'll see you next time.